South Korea had obviously been hoping that exemption could stay in place, which allowed it to export a little bit more than 2.6 million tons annually of steel each year without the exemptions, representing around about 90% of all steel imports. When it comes to aluminium or aluminum to American English viewers, that figure is around 4%, so a little bit lower, but still very substantial. So it is going to have a significant impact on the economy, especially given we saw the job figures out today. We've seen a big slowdown in the manufacturing sector and the construction sector. So we already had a big surplus of steel here in South Korea. It's expected this is going to only add to the massive surplus of steel and aluminium in the country at the moment, because the US not just ensuring that there are tariffs on the raw products, but also almost 260 products derived from those two metals. So the government yesterday saying that they would come up with an emergency strategy, sort of a call center for businesses, a consultative process between the industry, Ministry for Trade and the big firms impacted by this. Today, the government's saying they're going to come up with a strategy by the end of the month to try and mitigate some of the damage that will be caused by this action. We don't know what that will be, whether it will be looking for alternative markets, if it will be subsidies for the steel sector, but they say they will have a plan in place by the end of this month to try and help the sector. And I think any early optimism that Trump might back down on this is really diminishing. And there is a sense now that the US is prepared to weather, or at least the Trump administration is prepared to weather stock market pain, economic pain, a potential recession to try and bring manufacturing back to the US, and he is serious about this issue.
Jack, we've been hearing that two major steel makers in South Korea, POSCO Holdings and Hyundai Steel, are considering new investments in the United States. Now, looking at this very fluid tariff situation, will they go ahead?
It is likely. I mean, we don't know what's happening with the Trump administration because, of course, Trump says one thing one day, something else the other day, and there is always change. And so it's very hard to come up with a predictable plan or a course of action. But what we are hearing from POSCO and Hyundai Steel, particularly from POSCO, is saying, yes, look, what we can do in this situation is we could open a plant in the US and just move production over there, essentially giving Trump what he wants. And, it deals with some of the surplus steel coming out for them as well. Another big thing that's not so much talked about here, but of course Trump has talked about it a lot, is this big pipeline project in Alaska, and those companies talking about the possibility of becoming involved with that. Trump's talking about South Korea putting trillions of dollars into them. I don't think we're going to see anywhere near those figures, but there could be substantial investments. And of course, South Korea then plans to buy a lot of that energy to try and help with the trade surplus, the very large trade surplus it has with the United States, which many analysts here believe is really what's driving this hardline stance from Washington to try and bring that surplus down. And there's also, perhaps some hope that now that the quota is gone, because now there's only about 2.5 million tons of steel going to the US each year, trying to keep it within that quota, that maybe given the turbulence in the next year or two, I mean, America's still going to need steel, that they might actually be able to export a little extra steel despite those prices. And that's why we've actually seen the share price yesterday by the end of trade. We saw quite a significant climb, around 5.9% for POSCO, which is sort of contrary to where you would expect the share price of the company to be going, given that its products have just been slapped by a 25% tariff.